Well, this is a video on guest appearances. It only makes sense to introduce my guest for this video. Everyone, say hello to my guest for this video, the noble mass of flesh!
Kill me now!
Ah, what a jokester. Getting eyes on your show is probably the most important thing you need to be successful. Yes, people watching your show helps, big shock. One of the best ways to do this is having a guest appearance from a notable celebrity. Cartoons are a master at this. Most cartoons that last longer than a season or two will usually have a few guest voices. The thing is, for everyone that makes sense, there's a whole lot that try to mash a square peg into a round hole. And that's how we get whatever this is. So with so many weird guests in cartoons, I want to highlight some of the absolute strangest ones. I wanted to do a video on this for a bit. It wasn't until my friend Shim filled out this giant tier list where he finally asked me to make this video and pushed me to finally do it. Thank you so much for this idea, Shim! Watch part 2 of the 1K special, watch part 2 of the 1K special, watch part 2 of the 1K special, watch part 2 of the 1K special. Anyways, pull up behind the voice actors to make sure you really heard what you think you heard. These are some of the weirdest guest appearances in cartoons. So you gotta start somewhere. Let's go back. All the way back. To the Stone Ages. AKA Flintstones. Flintstones is well known to be one of the first cartoons to have celebrity guests. But I have to tell you that you've been lied to. Yes, there's a lot of celebrity parodies in Flintstones. And yes, they all jam the word stone and rock into wherever they can. Just like how Minecraft fan songs jam mine and diamond into every sentence. But most of those aren't actually voiced by a celebrity. Sadly, Michael Jackson and Billy Joel did not voice Michael Jack Stone and Billy Joel Stone. What's even the point anymore? The few they do have aren't super weird, honestly, like Anne Margaret or Tony Curtis. Well, besides for Tony's hyper-realistic face. But hey, had to start somewhere. Now, there became a super obvious problem making this, I found out while researching. I know nothing outside of cartoons. For example, an episode of Dexter's Lab randomly focuses on two robots voiced by Fred Willard and Mud Mole as they leave the lab and sing about riding motorcycles. For inexperienced dumb kid me, my only thought watching this was, why are Vlad Plasmus and Boogeyman singing about being hog riders? Like, it seems so random for these two specific actors to completely overtake an episode where Dexter himself barely appears. That is until I did that whole research thing and found out they hosted a talk show together and were kind of partners in crime. So this random decision actually makes perfect sense. Some of these appearances are fine on the surface, but weird in execution. And Arthur is a poster boy. Most of those are just celebrities playing themselves like Mr. Rogers and Matt Damon, but they certainly look. While some are just the person, now an Arthur, and thus an animal, as the previously mentioned, and the Backstreet Boys, some are playing other characters, like Jane Lynch, or a really weird one, Goosebumps writer R.L. Stine. Who's playing Arthur's uncle, it just still looks like R.L. Stine. One of the most normal looking guests is Lance Armstrong, but obviously he's got his own problems. One particularly weird one is Neil Gaiman, a famous writer. Mostly does off-color horror stuff like Good Omens and Coraline, and he's just an Arthur. He's there. Duck Dodgers is a fun Looney Tunes spin-off, but despite taking place in the 21st and a half century, it doesn't stop death metal band Megadeth from appearing, or Brian Wilson, member of the Beach Boys, who has a severe roller coaster ups and downs in his mentality. Yet despite avoiding consciousness of its own band, finds himself with Daffy Duck. Tom Jones, singer of What's New Pussycat and It's Not Unusual, among others, somehow granted for the theme song for this show. Also makes an appearance in one episode where Daffy stole his voice. He then actually sang It's Not Unusual. But what is unusual is that, despite not changing the lyrics at all, this is very clearly a new recording just for this show, as he sings it slightly differently. But Looney Tunes can get loonier with guests, like in Looney Tunes Show. In one episode, Granny tells her backstory about how she was a spy in the war. Who do you possibly think could voice young Granny? That's right, Fluff and Progressive. Naturally. One more for Looney Tunes. In one episode of New Looney Tunes, the worst name for a show ever maybe, Bugs Bunny is scared that he will lose a rap battle. So he just kind of stumbles into Snoop Dogg. There's no build-up, Snoop is just there. Snoop's been in cartoons before, and he's basically a prostitute at this point. I genuinely think I can get on one of my videos and I just give him $5. But it was just so sudden. Frank Zappa was an extremely influential musician. He made over 60 albums across 30 years, spanning many, many different genres, and was entirely self-taught. He's a music legend. He also voiced the Pope in episode Ren and Snippy. His greatest achievement. Sometimes when you have guests, you want to play multiple roles, really just milk them. This will lead sometimes to having a guest play a role that makes perfect sense, and another role that doesn't do that. The best example is John Cleese in Over the Garden Wall. Him as Quincy Epcot? Makes sense. He's a quirky old man. Fits him perfectly. Adelaide, on the other hand, is a creepy old witch woman who wants to enslave two little boys. Bit of a difference there. Okay, the main reason I wanted to do this video for years, until Shim finally forced me, this one. In one random episode of We Baby Bears, a spin out to We Bear Bears, there's a skeleton pirate who only appears for like 2 minutes. But you see, he's a skeleton. So clearly, the only person that can possibly voice this man is Toby Fox Undertale. I can never wrap my head around this. Freaking Toby Fox, a man who never acted at all, he's known for developing the funny skeleton game, is just in this random spin-off no one cares about. The epic backstory of how this happens is they asked him. That's it. This episode has the first non-binary character in the series. A lot of people are complaining about how dare they acknowledge people exist. The entire internet was freaking out because Sans Undertale. A bit of a personal one. I remember when I first watched Steven Universe a few years back, I got to the episode with Garnet and Amethyst fused. They became a new creature named Sugalite, with a very unique voice.
God, how great it feels to be me.
I wasn't into voice actors back then, so I didn't check who it was. I just kind of let it be. Then like a week later, I was hanging around and I was like, that was Nicki Minaj, wasn't it? Yeah, Steven Universe had a bit of a trend of getting female musicians to voice fusions, which was subtle foreshadowing that Garnet, voiced by Estelle, was one too. But nowhere as big as Nicki. She blew up right after this episode, to the point where Sugalite was basically barred from appearing again outside of silent cameos. Then a decade later, an indie show got her. Time is just so freaking weird, man. So you're all familiar with the rating system, right? You know, G, PG, all of that. Do you ever wonder who made that system that was completely ignored the second PG-13 came around? Well, it was Jack Valenti, the president of Motion Picture Association of America for a long time. He is somewhat controversial due to all the rules he's made as president, and was noted to hate VCRs and the like, comparing them to actual murder. He's in Freakazoid. Because yeah, something strange to me is when small shows get bigger names. Summer Camp Island is a show that's only been talked about on YouTube 2 entire times, and both times were me. Despite that, there will be Goldberg, Elijah Wood, Richard Kind, and Cedric the Entertainer, all in fairly minor roles. Party Beaks is a very good yet very forgotten show. The show had Dave Foley and Mark Marone as main characters, in addition to RuPaul and Andy Kindler. One show that is much bigger now, but very much not was when it aired, was Clone High. Before the reboot, this was a very underground show. So of course it had pretty guest stars in like every episode. Jack Black right before he became a household name, Mandy Moore right before she swapped from musician to actor, Tom Green right before he wanted to kill him, and Marilyn Manson right before just so freaking much, man. The Boulder is the objective best character in Avatar, and he also a very clear parody of The Rock. So, why isn't he voiced by The Rock? Well, money, probably. But I think it makes him being voiced by Rock's rival Mick Foley even funnier. Definitely not someone you expect to see in Avatar's very sealed off universe, with very little pop culture references. But seeing this first person goofball voiced by a professional wrestler is super funny. The Cat Dog TV movie promises to finally reveal the parents of Cat Dog. The thing everyone and their mother has asked. How does this abomination come to be? They reveal the origin of Cat Dog is they're adopted. Great, thanks. It's like revealing that the Krabby Patty cereal formula is made out of meat. Which meat? Frick you. But their dad, a frog with a really big nose, is Billy Bob Thornton. This is a man who was nominated for Best Actor and won Best Adapted Screenplay, even if neither of those accolades were for this role, which actually deserves it. Ringo Starr appearing in PPG's 15th anniversary special really isn't that weird. The show is inspired by the time period the Beatles were popular. The Beatles are even referenced in an episode. But they bring in world-famous musician Ringo Starr in an episode based around a musical video game, and he never sings. What was even the point? Not the most glaring example of this, that's later, but it still feels weird. 25 episode T is for Trouble, and Mr. T training with Johnny to finally fight his childhood bully. Believe it or not, Mr. T isn't the weird one here. It's who the bully is. It's Richard Simmons. The guy from a lot of fitness and aerobic videos. He shockingly appears in a lot of cartoons, but like, why would you willingly want to play yourself as a bully? Milli Vanilli is an R&B band that naturally just had to appear in the Mario cartoon. You don't get it. You have to listen to all their songs to get the final star in Mario 64. What's really funny is that despite having them up throughout the entire episode, less than a week later, they were supposed to lip syncing their songs, basically ensuring their downfall as a band. Sometimes the voice actor not being weird is weird in and of itself. Dora had an episode inspired by Alice in Wonderland where the Mad Hatter was voiced by, of all people, Mel Brooks, the father of parody movies, and overall a very eccentric guy. And he plays Mad Hatter pretty straightly. Like, yeah, Baby Show wouldn't have him pulling references to Blazing Saddles, shockingly, but like, this guy really couldn't voice by anyone, and it'll be the same. I doubt the 3-year-olds would notice. On a similar note, Ozzy Osbourne, heavy metal musician, has several groups accusing him of being a Satanist. Bit the head off of both a bat and a dove, won't pay royalties to his own bandmates, constantly seen with a cross in his mouth as if it was a cigar, appears in Bubble Guppies. Like, he's a one-off villain in Sid Fishy, playing his stage name Sid Vicious, Maybe not the ideal pick for a kid's show. We'll be thankful this show takes place on the seafloor. If it took place on the ocean surface, a seagull is definitely losing its head. Brought a lot of heavy male guests so far, but the weirdest one has got to be Guard, Kids Next Door. This is an entire episode of them as seeing sentient food, basically torturing kids for 11 minutes. All led by the Guillermo Muffins. The songs they sing are actually extremely heavily modified versions of their own songs. They actually credit themselves in the episode with an acronym. Likely a kid who watches this episode doesn't end up looking for the band to find an album in the Lost in Space. To have a segment, I want to look at Robot Chicken. It's a parody show, so of course almost every character is based on a pre-existing character, except now they either swear, meet a gory end, or have sex. The only 3 jokes Robot Chicken can make. The fun thing is though, when they get the original actor to voice the character. Some of them are respected like the Walking Dead crew, which is already super violent, or the Star Wars actors, who basically make a living doing 2 things, being in Star Wars and being in parodies of Star Wars. The really fun part is when they get actors from children's media to reprise their roles. Some examples include Bob Bergen as Porky Pig, Dave Foley as Flick, Andy McAfee as Phoebe Heatherdale, Danny Goldman as Brainy Smurf, Chris Summer as Penny, Kissing Jimmy as Sarah Sanderson, Craig Griffin as Daphne, Frank Welker as Dr. Claw and Megatron, David Kay as Beast Wars Megatron, Billy West as Doug, Greg Sipes as Mikey, Lance Chambers, Danielle Harris, and Jodie Karst as the Thornberry Girls, Dave Ratner as Flint, Dante Bosco as Zuko, Fred Savage as Oswald, and Drake Bell and Josh Peck as Drake and Josh, which confirms Drake as teen groupies, at least right before he was charged for child endangerment. Okay, so move on to the next segment. So you might have noticed that an entire channel was excluded from that last segment. That's because Disney is so ridiculous, it's getting its own part. One I mentioned before, the Lilo & Stitch series had an episode building up a really important person. Lilo predicted it might be the president or someone else. But no, it's Who Wants to Be a Millionaire host Regis Philbin. We all believe in the Church of Regis here. Well, actually, he might be a god, since in the Hercules show, he voices Typhon, father of all monsters. This is played completely straight. The creature under your bed was given life by Regis Philbin. Another entry in Mel Bannon, a kid's show for some reason. 2 members of Metallica voice some dragons in Bay the Barbarian. They don't sing or anything, they're just there. In the most painfully 2000s thing of all time, Smash Mouth is the high school musical entertainment in Kim Possible. Because clearly, a high school could afford a major household name band at the height of their popularity. Shrek joke. Back in the 2000s, Disney had a trend of having their live-action stars become animated shows. For some reason, it didn't carry on to the 2010s, which considering Jake Paul was one of their shows, blessing in disguise. But we did get those Raven Simone and Nasty Tisdale and Kim Possible, Kyla Massey and American Dragon, Miley Cyrus and Emperor's New School, and The Replacements. In addition to Nasty Tisdale again as a main role, Brenda Song, Phil Lewis, and Billy Ray Cyrus and Phineas Ferb. I mean, if you've got a bunch of teens locked in your basement, might as well include them in your silly little show, you know? A really funny example is from Big City Greens. The episode Sheep Show is a huge message of how Disney in production meetings claiming out the show constantly going over budget. So it makes use of every way to cut corners in a show. Flashbacks. They have characters in the same room for the whole episode. There's a storyboard only scene. Very intentionally cheap. Then Tom Hanks has a single line.
Kids, look, a celebrity!
Hey, Green family, it's me, Tom Hanks!
The whole joke is they wanted to make the cheapest episode they can, with a punchline being the biggest celebrity they can, appearing for no reason. And Hanks was the one. Presumably since Disney has him trapped in the cellar recording Toy Story sequels for all eternity. Speaking of Big City Greens, it has a fairly normal idea that's really weird in execution. One episode has this doctor. Tell me his voice sounds familiar.
The name is Dr. Enamel!
If you said he sounds like Fozzie Bear, you're correct. That's Fozzie. And I should note, it's not as actor Eric Jacobson, promotional material, and the literal credits of the episode say that this character is voiced by Fozzie himself. Eric is only credited as Fozzie's personal handyman. The really weird part is they pull this again. In Amphibia, Kermit is billed as a guest star voicing Kermit the Frog, who I'm like 36% sure is based off Kermit. Kermit has a lot of marketing around him being an Amphibia fan since, you know, Frog. And again, promotional material billed this as Kermit himself being the guest, and not performer Matt Vogel. While like Fozzie in Big City Greens, Matt is fully credited as the voice. This one isn't a guest, but always baffled me. In Fillmore, the vice president of the school is voiced by Jeff Provost, aka the host of Survivor. He's never done voice acting before or since, but his voice is very distinct. So even as a kid, I couldn't hear him, but was always waiting for him to suddenly force all the kids to build a weird looking puzzle in exchange for a bag of apples. People voice himself isn't a new thing even in this video, but Proud Family has a really mean-spirited example. In real life, Al Roker is a famous newscaster. In Proud Family, Al Roker is a famous newscaster. He's also an evil deal-making reality warper who enslaves people, but is still voiced by Al Roker. DuckTales has 2 weird ones. First is another normal idea, weird execution one. Lin-Manuel Miranda appearing on a show isn't weird. He's also locked in Disney's basement. But like, why cast a guy who's only known for singing and never have him sing? It's Ringo all over again. Maybe they just wanted to flex their casting budget. Makes sense. Most characters in this show are voiced by TV celebrities. We get one Hollywood celebrity though, and it's, of all people, Don Cheadle. And he's Donald. Kinda. Donald is the voice modifier that for some reason makes his voice Don Cheadle. Like, that's hilarious and gives us the funniest image of all time, but like, why not just make Donald's normal voice, I don't know, his VA's natural voice? Then Verity follows at Coolio and Larry King as the wax figures. Coolio's a bit weird for a kid's show, but like, Larry King, shout out to this guy for just being down for anything. I don't know why I ended the segment with this one. The Don Cheadle thing is much funnier. Most cartoons only get one guest on account of being really small. Others have enough clout to get multiple. Not all of these are weird though. For example, regular show has more guests than you might think. The weirdest it gets is, hey, did you know Aquafina was in a regular show? Isn't that quirky? I mean, there's also Donald Glover, Tyler the Creator, and MC Light as the group of rappers. Which, considering how dirty they can be, is a bit interesting, but this is a regular show, this isn't that out of the ordinary. No, I'm not playing that clip. Adventure Time is the same. They got guests, the one that makes sense. Alan Tudyk, Neil Patrick Harris, Don Glover again. He was carrying only 2010 scene. Freeza Fair really is just flexing. They cast several big celebrities in fairly small roles, like Clay Aiken, Shaka Khan, Ben Stiller, Jon Stewart, Kevin Smith, and Danny Trejo. If you want context on their cameos, watch my Phase and Fur video, it's low-key one of my best ones. A really weird one is Kelly Clarkson. She is a singer, this is the musical show, yet despite being a running gag that she wants to sing, she never actually does. I feel like this is a parody at this point. Also, you know that one voice in tons and tons of trailers? That's Don Fontaine. He's the In a World guy. He also in an episode where he narrated the trailer for the next episode, and episode his iconic line. Sadly, this was his final role, coming out 7 months after his death. While it hasn't been on for long, Teen Titans Go already has enough pull like some pretty big names. Bobby Recker is a baseball player that later broke into film and TV, and for some reason, Robin got him for his birthday party. There's no build-up, Robin just summons him, then Cyber turns directly to the camera and lore dumps on who he is. Ron James also had an episode, where he claims he's a big fan of the show. I assume he's a big fan in the same way Chris Pratt is to Mario. It's funny they got him for this, but not to voice himself in multiverses. There was also a multi-part special about Cyborg's favorite song, but it sort of has a higher budget than every episode combined. Because not only do they have a much more detailed art style, they also have Fall Out Boy as a giant transformer and CeeLo Green as a furry. Finally, Zack Snyder, in his only voice role ever, voices himself. You know, people either worship the ground he stands on or wants him dead, but I will give him this. He was funny in this episode. It was like the show for guests in cartoons. It's built into it for decades. Several shows and movies in the series are all about guests. Sadly, most are pretty tame and exactly what you'd expect. But I found two weird ones. Harlan Ellison is a dark sci-fi writer, best known for the short story I Have a No Mouth and I Must Scream. Clearly, a perfect fit for the funny dog show. Weird thing is that he's in Mystery Incorporated, a show that takes itself much more seriously, and that he, of all people, is the only guest who plays a version of himself. He has a beef with an H.P. Lovecraft parody, but they later become friends. A sad one though is Cass Elliot, who is a singer. Her episode was about 90% jokes she made about herself and her weight. Only 9 months after this aired, she died of a heart attack. I can't think of anything to say that's really sad, let's hop on sometime. Okay, so one time I casually brought up Charles Darwin to a friend, and he had no idea what I was talking about. So I was like, you know, father of evolution. He had no idea. So I was like, okay, you know, the guy with the finches. No idea. So I was like, okay, you know, the guy who fought Ash Ketchum ERB. And then he knew that. That's what sold him on the idea of who Charles Darwin was. The second-hand embarrassment I got from that is what I got looking up for SpongeBob voice actors. You ever realize how weird SpongeBob guests are? Like, no kid is going to recognize quite literally any guest they've ever had. With the only exception being, like, Johnny Depp. I came like a fire truck learning that Ernest Borgnine won Best Actor for a film that also won Best Picture while that served in the Navy. I, and anyone else in my age group, will never know him for anything else besides Mermaid Man. Or heck, Man Ray in his first 2 appearances was voiced by freaking John Rhys Darby? Treebeard was in SpongeBob? The early years were pretty standard for guests. Pat Morita, Mr. Miyagi, plays a karate teacher. Amy Poehler was a seemingly sweet grandma. But in later seasons, they were nuts. I really love how you can just look at a character and immediately tell they're voiced by a celebrity. None of them look like their actor, but they just so clearly do not fit with the rest of the world. Austin Brown, Food Network star, voiced a TV show host. So in this lovely episode, why does he have nothing to do with food? Main character literally works at a restaurant. It shouldn't be hard. Jeff Garlin voices a cannibalistic hamster. Nice. Film critic Gene Slott voices food critic James Scallop. I guarantee that's solely for the pun. Biz Marquis, one-hit wonder known for Just Friend, also in Sharknado sequel. Clearly a huge draw. The funny thing is he voices a cat named Ketty. A cat looks like Tom. Tom Kenny. You think you're so freaking clever, don't you? Because you're right, that's very funny. Good job. Kid me really like that one episode of The Viking, and I exploded when I found out the Viking was voiced by Ian McShane, aka Tai Lung. Amy Sedaris voices this. I'm just surprised anyone would willingly. Schneider is a very fun roundabout reference. He's part of the band Twisted Sister, best known for the song We're Not Gonna Take It. But another song, I'm on a Rock, was parodied in the movie. 5 years later, he voiced one off character in an episode. Dennis Quaid voiced Grand Tabby Crabs. It's not super weird, I just like this guy's design. Keith David appearing in something should be a requirement. Never in a million years would I think his SpongeBob appearance will be Gary's true voice. Then of course, there's the final boss of my constant annoyances of getting singers to not sing. David Bowie. He voices Lord Royal Highness in Alexis Repentis, a musical special. He does not sing. Now, listen, this was released during his hiatus from music. I get it. But why get him for a musical episode? The works of Grant Seth MacFarlane constantly lampoon celebrity culture and pop culture as a whole, until they became big enough to become what they lampoon, and with that, guest cameos followed. Shockingly low, despite having easily the most cameos of any show, nothing in Simpsons hit me particularly weird, besides being one of only 2 times writer Thomas Prashant's voice has been heard, as he's very reclusive. Futurama is interesting though. Getting former Vice President Al Gore is certainly an accomplishment. Much less 4 times. Was really shocked to find out though that his daughter was a writer on the show, making it a bit more understandable. The interesting thing is that he's a major environmentalist, and the Futurama DVDs have to be environmentally friendly. Maybe he had an influence on it, maybe not. Topping over to Seth's shows, it's where it gets really nutty. John Cryer, star of the show 2.5 Men, a show Family Guy loves to mock, still manages to appear as Joe's son for 1 episode. He's a recurring character, but only 1 episode had Cryer voice him. One that shocked me was Will Ferrell as the Black Knight. Will has a very distinct voice. He has some sound effects on his voice in this episode, so it wasn't clear that it was him.
You got trouble if you don't beat it.
Listen, buddy.
I said get lost.
Unlike the others 2, Ryan Reynolds played himself, where he has intense lust for Peter. Nothing I can say is funnier than that. Moving to American Dad, he has 2 notable ones. For one, The Weeknd was such a big fan of the show that he reached out to the staff personally and asked to write it for an episode. That gave us A Star Boy Is Born, an episode all of The Weeknd being a virgin who is set with songs all about how lame he is, sung by and written by the man himself. It's actually a really funny episode, and the entire reason Shane requested this video, since this was the only on-brand way you could think of me discussing favorite musician. Thanks, Weeknd. Shane watch 1K special, watch 1K special, watch 1K special. The other one is the 1 episode premiering Twilight Zone, where Stan meets Creepy Man, voiced by, of all people, Chris Pine. Kimi Nifiko is just absolute goblin of a man here. I see Pine as more of a serious guy, but he apparently requested to be weird, and weird he was. Unlike those shows which bow down to celebrities despite mocking them, South Park pulls no punches. The show proudly states that all celebrities are poor imitations, usually either by Matt or Trey, but if they do get a guest, it's intentionally underwhelming. I mean, I'm sure George Clooney's success came solely from voicing a gay dog. Couldn't be worse than Batman and Robin. Or who could forget Jay Leno's wonderful performance as Random Cat? Funnily enough, Jerry Seinfeld requested to be on an episode as planned to voice a turkey, but his agent shot it down since it could hurt his career. I'm assuming he fired his agent, she's similar came out after. They only have requested 2 actors to be on the show. And Sasha Headstring, who voiced a teacher every voice thinks is so hot they become lesbians after finding out she's one. Also, she's a spy who had an affair with Saddam Hussein and is brutally murdered. I love South Park so much because it allows me to just say the wildest things. The other one is Robert Smith, member of The Cure, who literally phoned in his lines while he recorded on a phone, with them using only his first takes that he had voicing himself in 1 episode. Also, he turns into Mothra. Those are that 1 episode that included PewDiePie. Actually, wait, why aren't there more YouTubers here? They're far more relevant with most people watching these shows than some random singer or actor. And not to mention, so much cheaper. Yet shockingly, there's really not much any. There's like Dan TDM and Skylanders, Jacksepticeye in Sonic Prime, Smash in the Angry Birds movie, and Mr. Beast in Mutant Mayhem and Kung Fu Panda 4. Please make it a recurring thing that Mr. Beast appears in 1 animated movie per year. That's hilarious. It should be the modern day John Ratzenberger in Pixar movies. Family Friends doesn't count, it was made by YouTubers. It seems like such an obvious thing, yet no one's doing YouTubers' guest voices. Heck, friggin' PewDiePie doesn't even count for his video, since his appearance is live action. What I'm trying to say is, companies, I'm available. Have your people call my people. And before I end this off, I want to tip my hat to basically the god of cartoon guest voices, Weird Al Yankovic. It feels like this guy has been in every cartoon at this point. Simpsons, We Bare Bears, My Little Pony, BoJack, Wander, Lilo and Stitch, Grim Adventures. He's been in everything, all with his very distinct voice. And it should be expected at this point. He's everywhere. But what makes it funny is the complete Russian roulette. So many of his appearances aren't telegraphed. He just appears. Both Wonder Over Yonder and Teen Titans Go start with building up these intimidating villains. Then it's just like Weird Al jumps here. He already looks so much like a cartoon character that it never looks out of place in a cartoon style. I feel my favorite of the times he's played himself is definitely Barnyard, where with no build-up he just appears, beats up Otis, everyone refers to him as Gary Winner, he throws an ostrich once. There's a mad parody where he voices Krang, where the only joke is that Krang and Craig sound vaguely similar. Gravity Falls, where he's a mass murdering and still wacky D&D monster. Transformers Animated, where you make a robot look like him. Uncle Grandpa, where he starts as a Hell 9000 parody, until he just morphs into Weird Al. Cal Pilgrim, where he's a random documentary narrator. And Close Enough, where he dies. Twice! Of course, his biggest role is Milo Murphy and Milo Murphy's Law. Not a guest role, obviously. But I love this so much, because to me, it's kind of, it feels like a parody of old celebrity cartoons. It stars Weird Al, a super quirky guy, weird literally in his name, and his whole character is all about being really normal despite all the weird stuff around him. It's actually really clever. Cartoon guests are weird, cartoon guests are stupid, but they'll always be so much fun. I hope to see more in the future. Assuming animation has a future, but let's not dwell on the sad state we're in. Well, that sure was a fun video, wasn't it? Unknowing massive flesh.
I tried to hum the candle one last time before turning, but I think I accidentally absorbed them by being.
Well, have you ever considered a therapist?
I tried, but I absorbed them too.
Oh.
In a world, there, I said it, happy,